You know, again, I'll go back. I think in the theater, you are actually, unless it's flat out comedy, like farce style comedy, I think you are trying to reach people one at a time. They become collective by default. Uh, so I do still think it's the same function. I think you still go, me personally, I still go about it the same way. I can write a line and I intrinsically know it's funny or it's not. And like what segment will laugh at this and what segment might be offended by this.
Everybody, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter, author podcast. Get to meet great authors from around the world and celebrate their journey as an author. Get to fall in love with a new author that you may have never heard of, but now you're going to absolutely love, and you will buy all their books and support them in their community, leave them great reviews and all that great stuff. Dennis is here with us on the podcast today. I'm excited to have him here. We're going to talk about his journey and so much more. Dennis, welcome to Living the Next Chapter.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Dennis, we just chatted a little bit before we hit record. Let everybody know, where are you in this big world of ours?
I live outside of Washington, D.C., pretty much between Washington and Baltimore, in Silver Spring, Maryland. It's the Ashton section of Silver Spring, Maryland. Anyone familiar with the area?
If I'm a new visitor to your part of the world, anything that I must see, must do, must try, where should I go?
That's a great question. If you've never been to the D.C. area, of course, there are all the touristy things, which are really quite fabulous. The various monuments and museums. So much is free. I mean, that's a great thing about D.C., things that surround the National Mall. They're easy to get into and they're really fascinating. So as much as it may sound touristy, and it is, it's really quite a fabulous collection of art and artifacts, etc. And tons and tons of good restaurants in this area. Same for Baltimore. And if you like the performing arts, I think there are 53 professional theaters, some crazy number like that, between Baltimore and D.C., including the two cities. As professional baseball, football, the whole nine yards. It's a great place to live. Maybe a little too expensive, but a great place to live.
Excellent. So if we come to your house, ring the doorbell, you're going to take us around and show us the sights.
Good.
Okay, yeah.
My doorbell's not working at the moment, but yes, please.
Okay. There'll be a lineup outside your door. I love it. That's good, Dennis. Thank you for making time to be on the show.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about your author journey. I'm really curious to find out from all my guests. There was a point in time when being an author maybe wasn't in the cards or wasn't kind of the front of mind for you, but now here we are. Something happened. How did it all start for you?
Yeah, I've always liked writing. I've always liked the actual doing it, the writing, regardless of what the writing was. I come from a professional theater background. I've spent, the vast majority of my life between theater and concert work and television. And that has exposed me to great writers and people who can communicate. So I guess, easy to say, I've always been very involved in storytelling, sometimes one of many people and sometimes by myself and, maybe an editor. So, but I do come from the performing arts background, and that's greatly influenced, I think, how I write. I've heard endless, and I do mean endless, dialogue from great playwrights and great actors for years and years. And that has an influence. I've learned what works, what an audience gravitates to, what tanks. So I've kind of seen it all in that regard.
It's a very interesting take on the approach to writing then from that perspective, because not a lot of authors I've met have that kind of background. So there must be some interesting things that you bring to authorship that are unique to you and your perspective then.
Well, the stories are endless, frankly. The proverbial backstage stories, whether they're true or something that you just sort of take and run with. So that's been a lot of great fodder for what I've been doing. It's funny, the title of your show, Living the Next Chapter. I sort of feel I've been doing that for years. I've sort of been preparing to leave the theater and to begin working more full time as an author. And I'm excited about that. And I bring with me all the things I've learned over a very full career.
Thank you for using the name of my show. That was very meaningful. I appreciate that. Well done. Well done. Okay, so tell us a little bit about some of the shows that you've worked with, been a part of. I'm sure there's many that we're going to recognize right away, but tell us a little bit about some of the shows.
Sure. Well, that's a great question. I mean, I've worked. It's interesting, in some ways you hate the whole name dropping thing, but I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of quote unquote stars or famous people, and I've always found it interesting how genuine most of them are, and really hardworking most of them are. I'll drop a few names. I've worked with Viola Davis and Denzel Washington and Patrick Stewart, Gene Kelly, Debbie Reynolds, Felicia Richard. I mean, the list goes on. Music, I worked with Johnny Cash and Jerry Lee Lewis. So I've got a varied background. So I really feel great about the exposure I've had, the chances I've gotten to work with great people on great plays. I'm actually old enough to have worked with George Abbott, the famous playwright, and Arthur Miller, and maybe a little more contemporary Sam Shepard. So to hear them, hear what they write and how they go about the process, you would think I'm dying to be a playwright, but I'm not. Theater requires a lot of people to execute well. You may see something on the stage with 2 people or 4 people, but there are 30 people that night at the performance assisting them in making that show happen. And if you look at Broadway musicals, it easily tops 100 people. If you start at the box office and the ushers and management and backstage and the actors, I mean, it piles up quickly. So what I've been learning to do as I've begun easing away from the theater, easing away from everyday involvement anyways, is learn how to work more independently, with a writing group or, group of writers and, and editors from time to time. So it's been a gradual, it sounds funny, it's been a gradual withdrawal from, working with massive numbers of people to tell stories to telling the story yourself, with the assistance and input of others. So I found that really fascinating, that journey. And it's been great for keeping my brain lubricated. I think it's very easy to just sort of sit back, and I've never really been interested in that. It's been a go-go life, and I hope to go right into these years. I hate to say all years, but I guess frankly that's what it is.
Do you get a chance to go and be a fan of musical theater and all of that, sitting in the seats with everyone else without having to try to figure out how all the magic is working? You just kind of sit back and enjoy it from an audience perspective?
It's taken me a long time to withdraw from that, I would go see a play, and I would be very interested in, of course, in the dialogue and in the story arc, but also, how did they do that? Oh, I know how they did that. And you'd sit there and you puzzle it all out. How did they light that? Blah, 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 blah. And so it's been hard to withdraw from that, but I have. It's a little bit of a busman's holiday, right? I don't attend as many plays these days as I probably should, but I do go. And my wife and I enjoy, and I've learned to step back and, observe what's going on at face value as opposed to what went into making this happen.
I'm a musician, so when I go out to a concert with my wife, she's there for the sheer joy of the concert. I'm watching all of the instruments. I'm going, wait, it's different on the album. I know they didn't end the song that way. That's in the key of G. Oh, I've been playing that wrong all this time. Like, I'm watching. She's just like, would you relax? Would you just relax and take this in? Right? I'm so enamored by the process of how these things come to life and having a little bit of knowledge about how to do it. You have way more knowledge. A little bit of knowledge about how to do it and then see it done well. I just am a big fan of not only the people on stage, but everyone that makes this happen, right?
I can clap freely now, and
Yeah.
not feeling any pressure about
Yeah.
and so, the curtain comes down. I can sit there, I can laugh, I can cry, I can not care. So that's been a real change of pace for me.
For somebody new to going to something like an event like that in the seats for the first time, any words of wisdom for us to come and participate in an audience perspective when we come to a show? Should we know about the story? Should we come in and be just open to what's going to happen? Any kind of guidance for us as a new participant in like a
Yeah,
musical theater?
I've always thought the latter. I mean, just going with the flow, accept what's up there, let it come to you. And you'll soon enough begin asking all the right questions about what's going on in the story. I've never been a big fan of things like trigger warnings or learning a whole bunch. Great if you know a lot about a particular story or a particular play, but I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's a prerequisite. Some of the best things I've seen, I just come with an open mind and an open heart, and I don't love everything, but I'm surprised how often I find value in the pieces I see.
Is that your approach as an author then? To come to the audience and not have them to be fully knowledgeable about what you're writing about to enjoy what you're doing? You're going to explain and lead them that way?
Yeah, I think I write about. I don't want to say the topics are obscure, but I don't know that they're everyday topics either. I do write a bit about music and how that affects the people I've known or what happened backstage during a particular concert. And again, I'm a fiction writer, so I draw upon life, but they're, 99% of the time, they're not real stories. So I try to take my reader. I'm so used to calling them the audience. I try to take my reader to some place interesting that they've not been before. Perhaps there's an inkling of something they've heard of or a situation they've been in themselves, but not a direct alignment.
Kind of a Wizard of Oz behind the magic curtain type setting for take people backstage, right?
Yeah, I do. I do. I've written a number of stories, many of them still seeking homes, I might add. But I've written a number of stories, that had taken place from the other side of the curtain. So,
Okay. That's an interesting place not many of us have ever been. So I think that's a curiosity factor right there for an audience.
it's a fascinating world back there, full of all sorts of drama in and of its own, and comedy. Like you wouldn't believe some of the things that happen backstage that never cross the onto the stage itself.
That's exciting. I like that. Okay, so take us kind of through a little bit of your writing then, Dennis. Where's a good starting point for a new reader coming into your world? Where would you like to send them first?
Well, I'm a short story writer primarily. I'll touch on what I've written in the past. I've written a number of articles for a magazine called Blue Suede News. So if you can find archives of that, you'll see articles I've written. Those are mostly interview of musicians, sort of well-known musicians, not stars. And I wrote like the guy said earlier, I wrote the book for a musical called Smokestack Lightning that I'm still trying to get producers interested in. And I think PRX has an archive, and I wrote the script for a radio program called Rock and Roll Heaven. I did that for a number of years about people who passed away at year end, who were a great influence on the rock and roll business. So that's the past. Those are the things I've done. What I'm working on now, and where I've had some things published, I have a short story in Fabula Argentae. If you go to their archive, I think it was last fall, issue 43 maybe, and currently Jerry Jazz Musician, which is a fabulous music magazine. If you've never seen it or never heard of it, it's really great. I have a story about it's called Every Night at 10, and it's the story of Louie Louie. and the effect it had on a generation, whether they knew it or not, and the whole supposed dirty lyrics aspect of it, and wasn't it? So, and the short period of time there between the release of Louie Louie and the Beatles coming to America. It was all of 11 weeks, and the amount of things that happened in those 11 weeks, including the assassination of a president,
Right.
the great morass that the nation was thrown into, I found a fascinating topic to write about.
It's kind of like capturing it like a time capsule too, as you're writing these things and getting it into words so that people have a point of reference, somewhere to go back to share the story again and again. I like when people capture that. As a music history guy, you got me for sure on all of this. It sounds exciting. Yeah.
I like comedy, so I tend to find the funny aspects in serious situations. There's very little separating tragedy and comedy. It's a pretty thin line, a pretty thin veil. And so I like to plow those fields, so to speak. So I do write a lot of comedy. It's not all comedy. I've had more than one person tell me it has a nostalgic bent to it. I think that's more than anything the fact that a lot of my stories do occur 50 or 60 years ago or even 20 years ago. So there is a bit of looking back, but I think it's I'd like to think it's a unique perspective and done with a sense of humor, done with what I know today looking back upon this.
One of the things we do in music terms when we're explaining a new band or song to go listen to, we kind of compare it to something else. It's like it's a mixture of Jerry Lewis and let's say something more recent. I don't know, Van Halen. I don't know. You're saying it's kind of like a mixture of these, so that people have kind of some context to what the song is like and the band is like. For your writing, do you have kind of some influences that really have kind of shown up for you as a writer that when you sit down to write, you're like, oh, I can tell in this moment I'm thinking of this author particularly?
Oh, that's interesting. I'd have to think about that one a little bit. I'm a big Stephen King fan,
Okay.
although I can't say that I write, in the horror genre. I do have a horror piece that I am working on.
Oh,
It's a four-part horror piece, but it's the first time I've delved into anything like that. Same with Dean Koontz. I'm influenced by his writing, and probably about 1,000 writers I'm not going to think of at this very moment.
right. I think that all adds to the kind of the seasoning of what we are and how we show up. Sometimes we're not even aware of the influence of them on us, but as we read people and bring in other people into our world, I think they leave a little mark on us somehow.
I agree with that. And a lot of my influence does come, has been playwrights and how they see and interpret the world in certain situations.
So you talk about an audience, going from an audience to a reader as you talk. How do you do that as an author then too, as a writer? How do you change your focus from an audience perspective to more of a reader's perspective?
I think it's one and the same in a lot of ways. It's all in how you're, and I use the term respectfully. It's all in how you're feeding the information or how you're parceling out the story, what you choose to tell first to essentially hook your reader or hook your audience, and then how you lay it out without being terribly obvious about what you're doing. So I think that's how I think about that.
Do you have any thoughts about the size of the audience when you write? An audience for a theater is a group of people. You're trying to reach a group of people. Are you trying to reach a single person as a reader then instead of a group mentality?
Again, I'll go back. I think in the theater you are actually, unless it's flat out comedy, like farce style comedy, I think you are trying to reach people one at a time. They become collective by default.
Okay.
So I do still think it's the same function. I think me personally, I still go about it the same way. I can write a line and I intrinsically know it's funny or it's not. And like what segment will laugh at this and what segment might be offended by this.
Yeah, I think maybe the challenge might be then just to put it into words when we don't have a visual cue. Maybe on
Right.
stage we can see the actors performing. Some things are not even said, just how they walk across the stage sets the
Right.
scene where you can't really, you have to then explain that in words, in writing, right?
Right. And you try not to do it, really obviously. You try not to bludgeon your reader by, just flat out telling them. You look for clever ways of showing it or showing them, as they say. I always
So,
find it interesting that everybody talks about storytelling, but one of the first rule is don't overtell, show, don't tell, all
yeah,
that stuff.
right.
So it's still storytelling at the end of the day.
Yeah, and how much of the story is reliant on your description of the story. I had one author on my show, and they said something like, set the scene, but let your audience put themselves into the story. So, your grandmother's baking pies in the kitchen. Okay, well, my grandmother's kitchen is different than your grandmother's kitchen. So, let me go in my grandmother's kitchen for this part of the story, and let me place myself there because it
Right.
might be different. The cupboards are different. The amount of pies she's making at the moment is different. The types of pie, like I want to be in the story too, right?
Right. Right. And I think that's very important. Hopefully the reader feels a part of what's going on. Sometimes it's observational. Sometimes I think the subject is so foreign that, they have to equate to something else in their life that is similar. But, as you say, not a whole lot of people have been behind the curtain in any long or meaningful way.
Yeah.
So, but what have you been behind the curtain for? So.
Let's talk a little bit more about some of the more recent things you're working on, Dennis. What are you excited about in the moment? Kind of let's bring people up to speed to today.
I have two pieces at the present time. One called Fraternity of Freaks, which is the story of a young man who overthrows a potential football career to be an actor, to be a part of the theater. Essentially to run away with the circus. So that is out. That's being shopped at the moment. Hopefully, we can find a home for that in the near future. And one I just finished that I'll begin looking to place is, if I could only remember the name of it right now, I was literally working on it this morning.
There you go.
Uh, Wish You Were Here,
Okay.
which is oddly enough that same narrator, the football player become thespian, and his on again off again relationship with a young woman and how their lives transpire together and then apart for many years, and I won't tell you the ending as how it resolves. So those, I'm actively working on a number of stories at this moment. I'm actively working on placing it. I joke sometimes that, in the theater, I think I prepared more Broadway shows than anybody else, or worked on Broadway shows that never made it to Broadway, or if they made it to Broadway, I had long left the show to be involved with something else. And I feel a little bit of that way about, some of the stories I've written. I've been on a lot of short lists, and gotten a lot of great feedback, and please send again, that type of thing. So I believe it's a matter of time. I'm confident about that. So, but it's a never ending, just like an actor auditioning for a role. It's a never ending process. It's a never ending battle to be heard and to be seen, or in this case, to be read.
For a reader who might not be aware of the process, Dennis, when you talk about having your writings out there for people and you're placing them in front of people for the next step, can you kind of unpack for a reader who doesn't know how to do this and what you're doing? What is actually happening when you're writing these stories and putting them out into the world? What are you waiting for? Who are you looking for? How does that work?
The first, as a short story writer, again, not a novelist,
Yeah.
even though I am working on putting a collection together, so that would sort of travel in novel form, if for lack of a better word. But obviously it starts with the idea of what do I want to write about? What's the story? Then it takes, for me, I'm relatively slow at it. It takes quite a while to flesh out what I'm trying to do. I work with a writers group. One of the members of that group, Lucy Frost, you've had on the show,
Amazing.
on your podcast. And she's a great person. Her book just came out, by the way.
Nice.
How the hell did I know that? So that's out in the marketplace. She's a great writer.
Yeah.
So you then begin workshopping it, I guess, for a lack of a better way of putting it, with your writers group, or with I have another person who I call my primary reader, who gives me a great deal of feedback, and then you work it again. When you finally get it to the point where you think it passes the sniff test, you then begin to submit it. Who can I interest in this particular story? There are many literary magazines out there, but they're all looking for something in particular. Even the ones that say they are eclectic in their approach. If you go back and read back issues, you can see there's a bent there, that they're looking for some type of story in particular. So you try to line up your story with editors who will say, yes, this is for us. And it's a long process. It can take, once you've submitted it to a magazine or magazines that you think would be interested, it can take 8 months sometimes before you hear back. And so it's a long process in getting your work out there and getting it accepted. And, there's always rejection. You have to learn, and same in the theater, you have to learn to deal with rejection on a pretty consistent basis, even for your things that do well. If they get 200 submissions, I don't know how many they actually get. That's probably more than that. But if they get 200 submissions and they can run, 4 short stories in their next article, even if you've written something great, the odds are not in your favor.
How do you stay motivated when you have stories out there, people reviewing them, you haven't heard back, but now it's time to write again? You're like, I want to celebrate what I just did. I want this to be done and complete. I want to finalize it, then move to the next story. You're still writing while these are still this unknown is happening, right?
And I've got several out there at the moment, including a couple in the reprint market. I think you have to really love to write. There's a big part of me. I've been the proverbial go-getter for years, right? Always trying to work on the next project, the next thing. How do I get better in the industry or better known? Of course, we're talking about theater there, but I found it has transferred over to writing too. I keep trying to get better. I keep trying to write the next story, get somebody interested in that, in hopes that moment will come where any number of stories have a domino effect, that they all begin to fall at once. Then you get the notoriety, so you're not making a cold ask. Someone is asking you to write a story for their magazine. So that's the ultimate goal. I'm still a ways away from that. But I work at it every day. I like to write. It's interesting. I don't mean this literally, but I really, in many ways, write for myself. I like the function of writing, and for a mythical reader, it's kind of secondary whether it gets published. Get me wrong. I want to be published. I'd like to be published more. But it's really the joy of writing it that most thrills me.
That's interesting, right? Yeah, because then you're not reliant on the response of the audience to the book.
Right.
You're just going to keep writing anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
It's, in the theater, if you're not getting a good response from the audience or from the critics, you're going to close.
Right.
So I've lived a lifetime of that, and I don't need that in my life anymore. But again, don't get me wrong. I still pursue being noted for what I do.
One of the things you get when you get into the theater is you get immediate response from an audience. If the joke lands, if it's a good moment, everyone is applauding. Right. That's good feedback as an author. you don't get quite as much feedback. You don't get a lot of thundering applause and a big group of people gathered around you to give you instant feedback. How important is it for you as an author to hear back from a reader when they come back to you with some comments about your writing, praise, or maybe even some suggestions? What does that mean for you?
I take every suggestion seriously, whether I utilize it or not, because the valuable information you're getting there is how are they perceiving this?
Right.
We think it's this way, but this person obviously doesn't agree with you, thinks it's another way. So I think all information, all feedback, whether you take it literally or not, is important. I think you can pick up the tone from someone who's read your work who liked it, but if you did this, they'd like it more. Now, is that worth rewriting the piece for? This is one individual. So you try to gather people whose opinion you trust. I have four people who read my material constantly, five, including my wife, Holly. But Lucy Frost, Shelley Crook, and Kate Beebe, we're part of a writers group, and they read my stuff and provide endless feedback and suggestions, all in a positive, good way. And I also I have a primary reader, Louis Sente, who I kind of write with him in mind because I think we are similar in our taste, in our sense of humor, and things of that nature. So, feedback from a group, I think, is paramount to writing a successful story. You can't do it by yourself.
Right.
Even though it's a solitary act, you have to have that feedback from trusted readers who are going to tell you the truth. It's easy to get and to hear praise, but accepting honest feedback is learning to do that. Theater has been great training for that, because you hear a lot of feedback constantly from the audience, from the critics, from the people you work with. So that was very good training for embarking on this. So I trust all those people implicitly, and they've been great to work with.
It's interesting because you did say earlier that you write for yourself primarily, but you do keep Lewis in mind, which is interesting. I like that dynamic that you have there in place.
Yeah. And I'll often ask that question, three of I guess four of the people who read my stuff are women, and Lewis is the only male. So he kind of carries that burden of the male perspective.
There you go. So the idea of
great balance.
That's nice. It's a good balance. And so the idea of writing in community is important for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't think it's, and I could be wrong, of course. Some people are incredibly independent. I don't think you can write a short story or write anything without a certain level of feedback. And that's not even to mention editing. I've worked with a couple of editors. Lucy Frost herself is a very good editor.
Yeah.
And what I've learned from them has been immense.
I think being in the room with other people, either virtually or in person, and hearing other people's feedback about someone else's work, and you're listening to that feedback happening in front of you as someone else's work is being reviewed, you get to pick up on other people's opinions and their insight that maybe to you personally, you would never think of it in that context. And you're like, wait, that's a good point. Maybe I never thought about that in my own writing, right? To hear that feedback about somebody else's work.
It happens all the time. I'll listen to, the writers group and people putting their various pieces in front. So I learned something, no matter, whose dish is on the chopping block, as they say. Most of them, those people I just mentioned, most of the people in the group I work with are novelists, are writing, longer stories. So there's something to be learned from that too, because the arc of their stories, is long, and the arc of my stories are short. But there's always something to be learned there, and I think it has worked the other way too. I think there's value in being able to tell the story succinctly.
Is it a matter of herding cats to kind of get a bunch of stories together as a novel? Like, is it hard to pull them all together and make something a standalone made up of multiple different things?
I think there's a yes and no answer to that. I've been writing a group of stories um, with that in mind.
Okay.
So, I'm very close to having finished it. It's been going on for years, I got to say. Um, it's a group of people from a small town in New England at the mid-century, mid-last century. And essentially, it's their growing up story, their coming of age story. Uh, so I have written those, all dozen of them, or 13 or whatever it is now, with that in mind. That was my intention when I started that grouping of stories. I wrote one and it kind of morphed into another one, and then it went on and on. And so over the past couple of years, while I've worked on a few other things, I've written stories with that in mind, that it would serve as a collection. It's linked, or link stories. You hear the phrase sometimes. They're connected by place. Many of the same characters. There are new characters come in and out, but many of the core characters follow through most of the stories, or they all have their featured moment. So, it's been an interesting exercise. I'm ready to. I'm hoping to shop that in the near future. It's not quite ready yet. Matter of fact, I meet with the writers group this week, and we'll go over yet another one of those stories. So
Nice.
they're very
Okay.
patient.
Very good. I think that's unique. I had somebody on my show yesterday. They have 12 short stories combined into a novel. And they actually struggled very much with what is the common thread throughout these, because they're written over a 12-year span. So they're a different writer over 12 years than we were in
Yeah.
the first story. And
Wow. Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
was interesting because they're really in real time, they were struggling with how do I make this all make sense for my reader? And I offered a humble suggestion as a non-author, host of a podcast. I said, what if the common thread is you? What if you're the common thread? And even though the stories don't even like lean into each other at all, or hinge on each other, you're the common thread in all of this, and just lean into that maybe. And he looked at me like, I've never considered that.
Wow. Yeah. That's very cool.
Right. So I just think as a reader, when we find an author and a writer that we fall in love with, we love the variety that authors come up with, right? So it could be a horror writing, it could be a comedy, it could be all different things. But the fact that they come from the same source, I find that to be really interesting and intriguing as a reader as well.
I like when I read other people's short stories, I like to think I'm learning something about the author. You know, so
Okay.
that's fascinating.
Interesting. So how do you then weave a little bit of Dennis into your writings? How do you kind of pepper it and season it with a little bit of you in these stories?
I think I've often served as the narrator or a character, and I don't mean me flat out straight me, but someone who had a similar background growing up, that type of thing. So I draw on life all the time, highly fictionalized, but I think I'm a part of me is in every story I've written over time.
What is writing in the way you're doing it now? How does this lead into your legacy as an author, as a writer, for you, your family? What are you hoping to put out into the world?
Well, I'd like to. Well, I think when the day comes that I'm no longer here, I would like to continue to exist in the library, in somebody's archive, whatever libraries and archives become in the future. To leave my final jobs in the theater over the last 6, 7 years I've been building theaters. I've been helping the Only Theater Center in Only, Maryland revamp their campus. And we've built or refurbished like 3 or 4 theaters, and some from scratch, brand new theaters from scratch. And that's sort of now become my theatrical legacy, if you want to use that phrase. So I'm hoping it to do the same thing with my writing, to leave some footprints behind, to leave something interesting, maybe, to provide somebody a good laugh or a chuckle long after I'm gone, which I hope's a long time from now, by the
Yeah,
way.
and it will be for sure. This is really great, Dennis. Thank you for so much for making time to be on the show, and for continuing to write, share your stories, and create this atmosphere for us as an audience or a reader, however you want to view it. We can come and follow your stories and your journey. Where do you want to send our avid listeners and readers? They want to follow you and continue to see what's next for you as a writer. Where do we want to send everybody?
Right now, I would recommend the thing most available I have at the moment is in Jerry Jazz Musician. Easy to find.
Yeah.
jerryjazzmusician.com. I'll pop right up under short stories. They do a variety of things when they have a whole section on short stories, and I think that's a good example of something I've written recently. It's called Every Night at 10.
Okay.
It's got some music associated with it. The magazine has added a couple of links to appropriate songs, so it's a very fun presentation of it. Jerry Jazz Musician.
Excellent. I'll make sure we have that in the show notes as well. A parting thought for anyone thinking of taking their career and going into writing. You've done it with what you've done, and now it's working well. But someone listening in, they're like, I've had a career in X, and now I'm thinking about moving into writing. What do we bring with us from our career into our writing? And what's some suggestions for an author?
Yeah, good question. You have to love the concept of story. I mean, you either have the skills to write, like many things in life, right? You either have the skills to write a story or you don't, but that shouldn't necessarily preclude you from writing the story. But draw upon that life experience in an interesting way, in something you think someone would be interested in reading. And then I think it comes down to, can you write or not, and how well can you write? And you can improve as a writer for sure simply by writing.
Great advice, Dennis. Let's leave it right there. That's really good. I would love to have you come back in the future as well to celebrate. Maybe when the novel is launched, we'll have you back to celebrate. But keep us in mind. I know our audience loves to hear back from our guests as new projects come out, and continue writing, Dennis. It's so great that we have you on the show and we can send people your way.
Thank you very much. I'll do that. And I want to thank you for having me on. This has been great. I sincerely appreciate it.
Excellent. And our good thanks to Lucy as well for helping us to make this connection. So thank you, Lucy. Excellent, Dennis. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast. Glad to have you here. I just want to let you know that you can always find out what we're doing live in the moment by going to our YouTube channel. Head over to livingthenextchapter.com. There'll be a link right there. Head over to our YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all the things that all the YouTubers love to say. And in our YouTube channel, a couple things. You're going to get advanced listens. You're going to get the episodes that we're working on in real time. So we record and post daily on our YouTube channel. I'd love for you to give us a follow over there. As well, we're making playlists. We have over 500 episodes. So finding the right episode for you, we're trying to group things into playlists. So if you like children's books, if you like business, you like historical fiction, we're grouping our authors together to make it a little easier for you to find your favorite next author. So head over to livingthenextchapter.com. And again, I'd love to hear from you. Hearing from the listeners of the show is great. And I just want to say thank you for being a part of the podcast family. And I look forward to having you back for the next episode. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate your time and your listen. Take care.